The Occoquan Radio Podcast is a private production and is not affiliated with the town of Occoquan. Opinions expressed on the podcast are solely those of its host and guests. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Occoquan Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Ernie Porta, bringing you 10 to 15 minutes every week of irregular, unscheduled updates on things Occoquan and beyond. This week on the podcast, we'll discuss the public EV chargers in town, some new historic markers, report on the debunking of a Netflix series in our Rumor Mill Shredder segment, and close by reviewing upcoming activities in and around town. Make sure you don't miss an episode by searching for us on the podcasting app of your choice and hitting the subscribe button. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the Occoquan Radio Podcast. In town business this episode, I want to briefly touch on the electrical vehicle charging stations located at 170 Mill Street, near the location of the Urban Posh Boutique. At its meeting on December 23rd of 2023, the Town Council voted unanimously to grant a franchise to GreenSpot LLC to install 2 charging stations in the lot at the corner of Washington and Mill Streets. Founded in 2014, GreenSpot is an award-winning network operator specializing in developing, installing, and managing EV charging infrastructure. Despite an expressed interest in having some EV chargers in town to encourage electric car visitors to the business district, the council knew that such a project could not be a priority in the town budget, given other needs. Enter GreenSpot, who proposed the installation of a modest number of charging stations at their expense in return for the bulk of the revenue generated. The 2 chargers installed are Level 2 electric vehicle charging stations. These level chargers can take 1 to 2 hours to charge certain types of electric vehicles and much longer to charge others. While the town considered installing faster chargers, the town would have had to bear the additional cost. More importantly, however, the goal of installing the chargers was not to entice people to quickly charge their EVs in Occoquan, but rather to encourage them to take a couple of hours to do so as they shopped and dined in town. The chargers were fully installed and open to the public on August 18, 2024, and have by all accounts been a success. Within less than a month after installation, a total of 64 vehicles, or more than 2 a day, had used the chargers, and we continue to receive reports from individuals, including a state senator, who say they have increased their trips to town businesses, knowing they can charge their vehicles while shopping or dining here. In our Occoquan history segment this episode, I would like to highlight 2 new markers in town, one near the Millhouse Museum and the other at Mamie Davis Park. Each of these markers was initiated and funded by the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. The Commission is a 60-year-old regional council of 13-member local governments in the Northern Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C., governed by the Virginia Regional Cooperation Act. Its chief role is to provide information and professional and technical services to its members and serve as a mechanism for regional coordination. The marker project from the Commission was tied to the latter's desire to add interpretive markers to the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, which runs through town. Text was drafted by Commission staff and approved by the town. The Commission funded and designed the markers in conjunction with a marker company, and town staff handled the recent installation. The marker near the Millhouse Museum is entitled Economic Development in Occoquan and its Dependence on Enslaved Peoples. It describes the establishment of the Occoquan Furnace and Forge in the 1750s and its subsequent operation, as well as the prominent role of enslaved labor in both. In this latter aspect, it addresses a little-known topic in Occoquan's early history. The second marker at Mamie Davis Park is entitled Natural Resources of the Occoquan River and tells a little of the area's geology, geography, and fish and fowl wildlife. If you get a chance, please stop and take a look at the new markers. We're grateful to the Northern Virginia Regional Commission for thinking of us when it came time to install markers on the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail and appreciate both their financial and professional support. I encourage everyone who is interested in learning more about Occoquan history to visit the Occoquan Historical Society's Millhouse Museum and consider joining the Occoquan Historical Society. You can find more information at www.occoquanhistoricalsociety.org. That's the intro sound for our Rumor Mill Shredder segment. This is where we pay homage to the fact that while for much of its history Occoquan was a prosperous mill town, the only mill in operation today is the rumor mill. Here we take on urban legends, myths, rumors, or other similar topics that need straightening out. This episode, we're going to step outside of Occoquan and talk about an item that caught my eye in a daily free e-newsletter I get called 1440. It was a link to a story entitled The Myth of Blue Zones, published by an online site called Occoquan. The story caught my eye in part because I remember watching part of the 2023 Netflix series to which the story was referring. Perhaps some of you recall it as well. To relay this information best, I'm simply going to read the brief transcript of the Occoquan video. What's the secret to living a long, healthy life? Spoiler alert, Netflix lied to you. In 2023, the streamer released a popular series about blue zones, the places in the world that have the highest rates of people living to be 100. The series profiled locations in Japan, Italy, Greece, Costa Rica, and California, and argued that specifics about their diets and culture led to extraordinarily long lifespans. One problem? These places don't have extraordinarily long lifespans. What they do have in common, however, is a lot of bad record keeping. In 2024, the demographer Saul Justin Newman began parsing the data behind blue zones and found that it didn't add up. For example, Okinawa, Japan was supposed to be a blue zone, but the locals had the worst health in the country. They ate fewer vegetables than any other part of Japan and were some of the heaviest drinkers. So how did they have so many 100-year-olds? Well, they didn't. Because Okinawa's birth records were largely destroyed during World War II, the claims of longevity are mostly record-keeping errors. And in the European blue zones, there's a slightly shadier explanation. In 2012, it was discovered that 72% of Greeks reported as over the age of 100 in the census were actually dead. Why were the numbers so high? Because in many cases, someone was still collecting their pensions. So boring as it is, the secret to a long life is still good genes, eating well, and getting some exercise. In other words, maybe spend a little less time watching Netflix. I encourage everyone who is interested in quality journalism to subscribe to the daily 1440 e-newsletter. And if you are interested in more from Occoquan, check it out as well. This story was my first exposure to it, but Occoquan describes itself as follows. Modern life is mostly small bursts of information, tweets, posts, half-read headlines. Without context, however, it's hard to know what to believe or who to trust. We sift through the best work being done by some of the world's most respected thinkers, academic researchers, think tank analysts, authors, investigative journalists, to give you the context necessary to understand the issues that affect your life. And we do it all with short videos that won't leave you so bored that you start having thoughts like, what if my pets have names for me? If you're like us, your first question is always, what are the facts? We're actually crazy enough to track them all down. Let our obsession be your shortcut. Last for this episode, we'll close as always with upcoming events in town. On May 3rd, the town will hold the Occoquan Volunteer Fair from 10 a.m. to noon at Town Hall. This is a chance to discover volunteer opportunities in town for people of all ages and abilities. Connect with representatives from the town, visit Occoquan and other nonprofit groups to learn how you can support them with events, cleanups, gardening, historical sites, board positions, and more. This event is an open house format, so show up anytime between 10 a.m. and noon. No RSVP is necessary, and refreshments will be provided. Also on May 3rd, Leaf and Moss will hold a candle-making workshop from 4 to 5, and a tropical terrarium building workshop from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Earth Addictions will host a Gather, Ground, and Grow event at 7:30 p.m., and the Loft Gallery will hold a Discover the Magic of Watercolor class from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Then on Sunday, May 4th, the Art a la Carte Gallery will hold a reception from 2 to 5 for their featured artist of the month, Deirdre Pistocchini, who will share her Hawaiian paintings and experiences. For more information on some of these and other activities in Occoquan, go to www.visitoccoquanva.com www.visitoccoquan.com/events. Again, that's www.visitoccoquanva.com/events. That brings us to the end of this episode of the Occoquan Radio Podcast. Please consider checking out our new occasional podcast series from Occoquan Radio entitled Up to 15 Minutes of History, where we use recent events as a jumping off point for learning a little bit more about the world in which we live. You can access our inaugural episode of Up to 15 Minutes of History by looking for it on Podbean. In the meantime, make sure you don't miss an episode of our signature podcast by searching for us on the podcasting app of your choice and hitting the subscribe button. I'm your host, Ernie Porta. Thank you for listening.